Hi everybody, Emily here for Scrap Academy. This week we are playing tag as part of the summer camp, and this week's challenge is sponsored by Bramble Fox. So I'm part of the design team of Bramble Fox and their products are absolutely fantastic, so that's a great prize for you to play along and try and win that one. You'll see it will be really worth it. So this week we had to play tag, and part of the challenge is obviously to use tags and also to perhaps discuss about packing a suitcase or something that's been tagged or anyway. I am not really the kind of person to use tags on my layout. It's something that I don't really do, and if I do, it's not in a place of highlight. It's really rare that I use that I use tags as the focus on my layout. So I decided to go with something completely different for this week's challenge. Part of the prompt was to talk about tag suitcase, and I kind of twisted it on its head, and I created a tag mini album, discussing to talk about my holidays in Cuba. I've not created a mini album about that yet. I created the odd layout about my holidays in Cuba, but I never really created an album or anything like that as such. And so I thought tags would be a great idea to create a mini album. If you don't have a lot of time, a tag mini album is really quick to create. It's less time than a full mini album where you have to do some binding, anything like that. So it's a great way to create a quick mini album. However, my project wasn't as quick as that, and you'll understand why. I went on to the whole theme of labeling suitcase, and I actually created a 3D suitcase, a paper suitcase, to hold my mini album. And most of this video is about that. Let's go back to the tags mini album. I have been wanting to use up my Pocket Lives cards that I get in my kits. Lately I've been wanting to use them up and try and do something with them rather than accumulate them, and therefore I created my tags out of them. So I shaped them into tags, and then once I decided to go with the mini album, I glued them against each other. With hindsight, that was a mistake, because I have lost some of those cards because later on I've glued some photos onto them. I was going to print, the idea I had in my head at this point is I was going to print some smaller photos, make them small and square to fit on the tags so that we could still see the tags behind. However, my printer is very noisy and when I came to needing to add the photos to my layout, Sophia was in bed and sleeping, and this is a kind of moment where you have to decide between risking waking up the baby and losing a card, and I just chose to lose the card. And so I glued some of the photos onto the cards that were on the back. So if you want to do a tag mini album, don't do like me, just plan in advance, have your photos ready, and stick to it, because I lost those cards. I'm not overly bothered with it, to be honest with you. It's something that doesn't bother me to lose the cards, or I'm not overly picky with this kind of thing. If I lose a piece of paper or if I lose a card, it's not something that affects me, because I don't tend to, which is probably a mistake, I don't tend to use straight away the papers that I love the most, or the cards I love the most, I have a little pocket with some of my favourite to keep papers. So, but in this instance, Pocket Life is not something that I'm particularly attached to, so I'm not too fussed about having used them and having lost them. But yeah, if it's something that you care about, and if it's something that you know you've got a small budget on, plan it better than I did in advance. Anyway, so we're moving on to the suitcase, and the way I created this suitcase is I created 2 little boxes of 5.5 inch by 3.5 inch in the rectangle size, and then the height was 3/4 of an inch, so that when closed it would be 1.5 inches. Those 2 boxes, you'll see, so I've just folded them and secured them, so that gives me 2 little boxes, and that will be the 2 main part of my suitcase. And I will create a sort of hinge system with paper to allow them to stay together, to stay closed, but also to open. And this is the easiest thing to do. You'll see in a second. I simply cut off a sheet of paper. So because I chose 3.5, and with the dimension I chose, I can't fit it into a 12 by 12 sheets of paper. So I simply decided to fill the minimum that I needed to fill up. And there we go, we fold everything, and then I just line it on the inside of my suitcase. If you want any of those dimensions, just leave a comment under the video and I'll get the dimensions as soon as I can back to you, so that you can try and reproduce this system. I went along and created it as I was filming the video, to be honest with you. So I quite like that kind of challenge. I quite like to make things like that and try and make my brain think and work when I create 3D objects. So the lining inside the suitcase is what holds the suitcase together. It creates a little bit of a hinge system. But then because it's visible on the other side, you'll see at some point I'm adding a little strip of paper the same color as the exterior of the suitcase, and that keeps it closed as well from the outside. Here I'm cutting strips of paper to create more of a decorative effect, to create the fake leathery stripes you would have on a suitcase, and it gives it that typical look of a suitcase, and it helps it be obvious, yes, this is a suitcase. And it's trying to reproduce, to be as close as possible to the real thing, and the closer you are to the real thing, and the more it looks like it. And there's those little tiny details that really make it work visually. So this is where I add that little strip of paper behind my suitcase. So I mark the size, I cut it down, I fold it in half so that I know exactly where the crease is going to fall onto the opening of my suitcase. Add some double-sided sticky tape, and then I attach it to the back of my suitcase. And that allows it to look clean and tidy and nice, and it just, those little tiny details are the things that finish it off. I'm now rubbing all the papers inside the suitcase and make it look all nice and clean with the glue, just making sure that every little bit of glue and double-sided sticky tape attaches. I then attach the faux strips onto my suitcase. So I used double-sided sticky tape just to make sure that it would attach properly. And I did it really, I didn't measure the placement, I just did it at a glance. I just look, and does it look the same distance? Yes, it is. I lined the flip side, the other side of the strip that was sticking out, because I wanted to use that for my closing system, and you'll see later on how I created that so that my suitcase can stay shut when I don't look at my album. So I do the same thing on the other side, line it, there we go, and I make sure that it's all attached properly. I then cut off a little point so that it looks like a real suitcase. I thought it was still too long, so I've trimmed it a little bit more. And now I am cutting off what I'm going to use for the handle. So I'm sticking with the same type of color combination. And here I'm punching out some cardstock to create my little corners. So all the papers that you see here are parts, it's a mixture of the May kit and the July kit from Hip Kit Club. The colours worked really well together. They're part of similar collections. And it had that summery vibe to it that I thought would work very, very well with my Cuba album. I thought, you know, we're talking about Cuba, we're not talking about, you know, Russia or any country that's colder and cooler. So I want it to have a look of tropical, summery, nice and warm, and that those two kits were perfect for that. So yeah. So once the corners, so the holes, sorry, the circle are punched, I fold them and to crease it, and I cut just one line of it just to open it, and I glue it around the corner. I don't know how to explain that any better. You just fold it in half and in half again, and you just do one layer cut from following one of the line up to the center of the circle, and then you just line it up with your corner of your suitcase, and you kind of roll it around. It makes sense when you try it, and it gives you that effect that you would see on normal suitcase. So yeah, it's an easy technique, and it's just those little details that make it look real and make it look authentic. Carrying on the details, I wanted to create some little hooks. It's not really hooks, some little strips that would hold the suitcase closed up. So I would slide underneath this, you know, the bigger strip that are long, and it kind of resemble a bit more like a real closing system. It's hard for me to explain with the words, but I hope my photographs at the end will show that better for you. So, and I'm also creating my handle, and my handle, I think it was getting late that night when I was doing my handle, and I did struggle a little bit to fold it to size, so I did cut it a few times, but I got there in the end. And I am sliding it underneath those little stripes that are already attached so that it fits nicely and it looks clean and it looks finished. In order to give it a bit of a finishing touch, I cover all of the stripes and corners with glossy accents. It's reinforcing the papers, and it helps avoid it damaging, and because although they are here to secure the suitcase, they are in places where there's more risk of them being damaged, so like the corners and the strips, and little thing like the handle or the little strip that keeps the suitcase closed. I've just added the glossy accents. It looks nice, it looks finished, it gives it a nice effect to the finished suitcase, but also it has a double function of making it stronger and avoiding damage. We are now moving on to the mini album, and I'm taking out all my tags, and I've decided to use a single hook ring, binder ring, and that will keep it all together. I have also decided to, so I'm sparing you the whole mini album in a way because it's very simple. I've got some of the pages that have a photograph onto it. I've got some of that I've trimmed, that's this full photo that I've trimmed to size to fit the tag, and then I've got some of the pages that have a bit of journaling. I've added the odd embellishments, so I've only used stickers for embellishments on my pages just to avoid adding too much volume because we already have a fair amount of pages to it. And then you'll see at the end I wanted to add a little tassels, ribbon details to it, so I knew there would be a lot of volume going on with this mini album, and I decided to stay really minimal on the embellishment. So I used the photographs that were 6x4 that I got printed away, and I'm just simply placing the tag on top of it to kind of frame it where I know it would look okay, because obviously I can't fit the whole photos, but I still want it to have the feeling of Cuba and kind of reframe the photograph. Even though they look nicely framed on their own, I wanted to reframe the photograph so that it would still keep that feeling that I had around Cuba. And I'm going through my photos and I'm selecting it, and I repeat the same system of placing the tag on top of it, cutting around it, and then gluing it on my tag and punching a hole again on the photograph so that I can attach it back to my mini album. The great thing as well with this kind of mini album is that you can then move the pages, or if you want to add any more journaling in the future, you can add another page to it, or you can remove a page. It's not stuck, and it's the kind of mini album where you can go back and alter it and add to it, and it's very much the kind of mini album that you can keep going. It doesn't have to be finished when you finish it. And I love that system, because I know there's still a lot of photos that I haven't got printed that I would love to see featuring in this mini album, and I'm probably gonna add to it again and work on this album again. So yeah, it's a format that I really like using for my mini album. Once I've got all my photo added, this is where I decide to add my journaling. So the first page, I wanted to use my layer stamps. It's kind of the intro of the story, and where I say that I went to Cuba on my own because I booked it when I was still single, and it was one of my bucket list place. It was a dream come true. I've always dreamt of going to Cuba and see all the old-fashioned cars and to see all the colors, and it was very much a holiday there for the pictures and for the eyes. I wanted to experience that visual effect of Cuba, and it was a holiday for the senses. And it was a fantastic holiday. So my first page, I wanted to use my stamps, but I knew that I wanted to use my handwriting for the rest because my stamps are too big to write down what I wanted to write. And I wrote by hand the rest of my journaling because I really wanted to capture some of the feelings and the things I did over there and what I saw and what it was like, and I knew I wouldn't be able to fit it all in with my stamps, so handwriting it was. And as I go along, I also add some stickers on some of the photos, try and decorate it, but very, very lightly, because at the end of the day, the photos are so bright and they're so colourful that I didn't want to add too much. It was not needed. Didn't need to add too much to it. I just mostly use word stickers that would fit the feeling. And yeah, it's just I love when a mini album is just the photos do all the talking, really. I am now adding the little ribbons and tassels at the end of my album on the ring, just to decorate it and make it look pretty and colourful and yeah, pretty. And I'm selecting through some ribbons that I had. Some of them you can see are basic grey and a very old ribbon. I think it's one of the first pack of embellishment I've ever bought for scrapbooking. So that's a very old one, talking about 2008 or something like that. Yeah, it's I've got some old stuff that I keep and that I know that I want to use later on, and I thought the colours of this pack was perfect, and the fact that it was different textures looked awesome. I'm adding 2 little tiny tags onto my suitcase, and it's just to keep with the visual effect of a normal suitcase, but it was also to repeat on the tag theme of this week. And there we go, here's my finished mini album. I absolutely love it. I think it's super cute. I love the little suitcase as well. It's something that I think I might do again for other holidays and have a collection of suitcase mini album. I think it's super cute. Thank you very much for watching. Please take part. You could win an awesome prize with Bramble Fox. You can place all of your entries in this week's album. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.